There have been numerous world-renowned prison escapes spanning across the decades, but let's take a look at the most ingenious ones. The escapes that took the most planning, dedication and outright bravery. Cho Gapbok. South Korean prisoner Cho Gapbok escaped by squeezing himself through the food slot of his cell door. You know, the small slot on every prison door? Yes, that's right. He actually contorted his whole body through a hole only 15 centimeters tall and 43 centimeters wide. Cho Gapbok was 50 and in prison for burglary. He had spent most of his life in prison and regularly practiced yoga, which must have aided his escape. One night, before lights out, he asked the prison guard for a special skin ointment, which they gave to him. I'm sure the guard didn't think he would be using it to squeeze through a prison door. Cho Gapbok was only 5 foot 4 inches, which helped, but it's still a bloody impressive feat, no matter your size. He squeezed his entire body through the hole in only 30 seconds. Unfortunately, he was caught again only 6 days later, and put into another cell with a smaller food slot. Frank Abagnale. Frank Abagnale, the infamous conman that Leonardo DiCaprio played in the film Catch Me If You Can, had successfully impersonated pilots, teachers, doctors and lawyers. So blagging his way out of prison was nothing short of a day's work. Frank was imprisoned for 12 years for fraud, but he got a stroke of luck when, in 1971, the US Marshal transporting him forgot his detention commitment papers. Frank took this opportunity to subtly drop the hint to one of the guards that he might actually be an undercover prison inspector disguised as an inmate, so the guards gave him preferential treatment. He then called his friend Gene Sebring, who had been previously visited by the FBI agent in charge of Frank's case. The FBI agent, Joe Shea, had left his business card with Gene. Gene then pretended to be a magazine reporter reporting on prisons, to also get the business card of a prison inspector. She visited Frank Abagnale in prison, posing as his fiancé, and slipped him both business cards. Frank used the prison inspector's business card to prove to his guards that he was in fact an undercover inspector. He told the guards it was imperative that he speak to the FBI immediately. Frank handed them the FBI agent's business card, but of course, Frank's friend, Gene Sebring, had already doctored the card, so it displayed her number instead. Gene picked up the phone, posing as the FBI. Gene said she needed to meet with Frank right outside the prison immediately. The guards happily obliged. After all, they didn't want to get on the wrong side of a prison inspector and an FBI agent. The guards watched as Frank Abagnale walked right out of the prison to be collected by Gene, and they both rode off into the sunset, guilty as hell. John Dillinger. John Dillinger had already escaped from another prison in 1933, using smuggled-in rifles. So, in 1934, when he was arrested again for a bank heist, he was placed in the Lake County Jail, which was known as escape-proof. The jail was constantly guarded by an army of policemen and National Guard. Yet, Dillinger still managed a daring escape by fashioning a bar of soap to look like a gun. He forced his way out of jail with his soap gun and cheekily stole a sheriff's Ford to make his getaway. But he was later caught by the FBI. The Great Escape. No prison escape in history has ever come close to the complexity of the Great Escape. The escape was from Stalag Luft 3, a German prison in operation during World War II. It took about 1 year and the efforts of 600 prisoners to dig 3 tunnels, which they nicknamed Tom, Dick and Harry. The tunnels were 30 feet deep and tunnelled underneath the main fence. The tunnels required complex systems, such as wooden blocks for support, a series of lamps and electrical wire, an air pump to supply air to the prisoners who were digging, and a rail cart system to move the earth quicker. The tunnels should have surfaced in a nearby forest, but they dug them a little short, and during the actual escape they surfaced in plain view of the guards. Consequently, only 76 prisoners escaped. All but 3 of the escapees were eventually caught by the Nazis. Colditz. The infamous World War II German prisoner of war camp, Colditz, was a castle situated on a cliff overlooking the town of Colditz. There were many attempted escapes from Colditz, but the best planned of them all occurred when two British pilots, Bill Goldfinch and Jack Best, planned to construct a two-man glider. Jack and Bill constructed the glider bit by bit in the lower attic above the chapel. The plan was to ride the glider from the roof across the River Muld. The pair built a secret wall in the attic to conceal the glider. The glider was painstakingly constructed from stolen pieces of wood, such as bed slats and floorboards. The Germans who ran the camp focused their searches on the tunnels. It never struck them to search the attic for secret glider workshops. The war ended and the camp was relieved by the Allies before Jack and Bill had a chance to make their escape. However, Channel 4 made a replica of the glider in a documentary about the escape called Escape from Colditz. In the documentary, the glider was flown successfully, showing the escape would have likely been successful. Thanks for watching, until next time.